Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to Lovin Daily. I'm Tim Diacono, joined today by Jonathan Chilia. How are you, John?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm quite excited. The end of the week, right? Weekend time.
The end of the week. It's the first weekend of September.
There you go. Do you have any plans for this weekend?
Keep them close to my chest for now. So let's get right into it. Today's titles that we're going to be today's stories that we're going to be discussing. The suspected killer in the SLIEMA double murder was wearing the victim's necklace when arrested. Testimony that came out from court yesterday. FEARNE says he's not seeing a strong anti-vaccine movement in Malta. A priest has been charged over a 4-year sexual relationship with a 15-year-old girl. Stephen SPITERI is buying time as the medical council is postponing an inquiry into an alleged medical certificate racket, and a Maltese life has been on hold for 7 years after being denied an ID card. And we're also going to have a guest at the end of the show, Mason Nehls, a young Maltese man who was arrested when he was 16 years old. That was 11 years ago. 11 years later, he's still waiting for his court case to conclude. And we'll be talking about that at the end of the show. But let's get into it.
Right into it. So
yes.
Right into the first story. Yesterday, the court case continued into the shocking double murder that we saw in SLIEMA, the case involving Chris Pandolfino and Igor Maciejowski. Quite a big development yesterday. It was confirmed that Daniel Muka, one of the suspected killers in this double murder, was found wearing the necklace of Chris Pandolfino, the gold necklace. This is quite a big development. There was a lot of questions whether this was a theft, whether this was a planned murder, and now it seems that he was caught wearing the necklace of one of the victims. And not only that, police have also confirmed that there were signs of a forced entry in the SLIEMA house that the double murder took place in. Quite a big development. I mean, like I said, a lot of people weren't really sure what the motive was behind these double murders. And now it does seem that the police are suspecting that it was a case of theft. However, there are some details that you need to keep in mind. Even though gold chains and other jewelry were found stolen from the two men, there were no signs of rummaging around the house. So there weren't like drawers, cupboards thrown wide open and everything just stolen. So quite a big development in this case.
Even if it was a case of theft, we still don't know whether these people were targeted specifically or whether they were just chosen at random. So like let's just remember how this case went down. It was on Tuesday night. You know, these three men entered the SLIEMA home of Chris Pandolfino and his partner Igor Maciejowski, and it was around 13 p.m. So one would have to ask, you know, Tuesday night they were probably going to be at home. So, you know, were they expecting to kill them? And they only spent a few minutes inside the house.
That's exactly right.
So was there some kind of mistake? We'll have to wait and see. What's also interesting is that the three suspects who have been arrested are all pointing fingers at each other. They're all accusing each other of being the mastermind. We've seen this before, and now all their lawyers are probably going to, you know, take it against each other.
That's exactly it. You know, everyone's insisting. Now, there's three suspects in this case. We've got Daniel Muka, Viktor Dragomanski, and Jesper Christiansen, who was found in Spain and is now in the process of being extradited to Malta. And all of them have insisted that it was not their idea, that they knew of the theft and the crime, but it was not their idea. So now we'll have to see who the mastermind was, but at the end of the day, Daniel Muka was found wearing the necklace of one of his victims. Moving on to the next story, before we get into it, we have a quick video to show you. Let's just run the video.
Fej għandu xaqsam il-tilqima, il-vaċċin ta' kontra il-coronavirus, ta' kontra COVID-19, la darba tkun available, u nizdina tkun available biss jekk ikunu saru testijiet li diġà bdew isiru barra l-pajjiż. Fuq mhux biss kemm taħdem, kemm hija effikaċi, ma kemm hija sikura, kemm hija safe għall-pazjenti. U jkun tiġi release biss meta nkunu ċerti li hija safe għall-pazjenti. Ġifieri jiena nagħmel l-appell tiegħi illi bħal ma jiġri fit-tilqim li ieħor f'tal-każ tingħata wkoll. M'iniex qiegħed nara li hemm xi moviment qawwi kontra it-tilqim, anzi pjuttost qed nara li hawn ħeġġa biex dinha tkun available, nkunu nistgħu ntuha kemm nistgħu ċittadini Maltin biex nkunu nistgħu ngħixu l-ħajja illi aħna nħidu biex ngħixu.
Minister. Okay. So that was Health Minister Chris FEARNE speaking yesterday about concerns or lack thereof regards a future COVID-19 vaccine. So recently, Chris FEARNE did announce that Malta will receive 330,000 doses of an initial COVID-19 vaccine if and when it's proven to be successful. And there was quite a strong reaction online. Many people, people are obviously pleased that hopefully this is the beginning of the end of this long drawn-out saga. But some people also said, like, I'm not going to take this vaccine. I'm healthy. I don't trust it. It was done too quickly. I don't want to be a guinea pig. And we asked Chris FEARNE about this, and he's playing it down. He said that he hasn't seen signs of a strong anti-vaccine movement in Malta. What he's seen is people keen to return to normality. They've actually ran a Facebook poll about it. We asked people, our followers, whether they would take this vaccine. The majority, 2,800 people, said they'd take it. 1,500 people said they wouldn't. What do you make?
I mean, I find it very interesting that the health minister doesn't see signs of a strong anti-vaccine movement in Malta. Go on my social media feed, you'll see signs of a strong anti-vaccine movement. I mean, I couldn't believe it after we announced that we had 330,000 doses of the vaccine coming our way. So many people were really skeptical of this vaccine. People were saying, listen, you can take my dose. I'm not interested in it. And obviously this comes after the last few weeks when, we had people like Putin saying that they're developing a vaccine that they've tested on their daughter as well. I mean, would you take the vaccine?
I don't know whether I'll take the vaccine yet, but then again, I mean, obviously I myself, as I'm sure most people, just really want this to be over.
Yep.
And we've been hearing from the beginning that a vaccine will be the end game. However, there's also a lot of politics being involved as well now, as you can follow on the international press.
Yeah.
So and it seems to be in its final stages as well, these vaccines, because there's now a number of them.
So definitely let us know in the comments below if you would take this vaccine. If a vaccine was available in the Maltese market, which it seems like it's going to be on the way. Would you take it, or are you still a bit skeptical? You want other people to maybe be the first trial run, and then you try the second batch?
Yeah.
Moving on to the third story, quite a shocking story actually, coming out yesterday evening. A 40-year-old priest has been charged with defiling a 15-year-old girl over a period of 4 years. So this is when she started when she was 15, ended up when she's 19. She's now 19. But that's not all. He's saying that it is part of a blackmail plot. That he's being blackmailed by this girl. Now he is now out on bail. His lawyers requested that he be given bail, and that apparently there was no sexual intercourse per se, but sexual activities were undertaken. Quite a crazy story. What do you make of this one?
There was no sexual intercourse, which means it's okay. Well, it only emerged yesterday. What's interesting about this was that it was actually flagged by the church itself, right? So the church has a safeguarding commission to flag these cases of paedophilia and alleged paedophilia by the clergy, and it flagged it itself, and it ended up at the police, and then ended up in court. And a lot of people are asking, who is this guy? Who is this priest? And his name wasn't published. And this is also, I find, a bit of an anomaly sometimes in the court when they decide, sometimes I will allow this name to be published before the sentence. When it's a priest, he can't be published unless it's convicted. So it seems there were a lot of people who are quite angry about that, and I fully understand it. Yeah, moving on. Moving on to
the next story, quite a big story, a story that Lovin Malta has been following quite closely.
Yes, so Shadow Health Minister Stephen Spiteri has managed to buy time into an ongoing inquiry by the Medical Council into an alleged racket where he was selling medical certificates or signing them off without even seeing patients. Now, this was revealed by Lovin Malta 3 years ago now. The Medical Council started investigating it a few months later, and it's now the investigation is drawing to a close. However, Stephen Spiteri has now decided to file a constitutional case against the inquiry itself, saying that it's unconstitutional on the grounds that it's acting as both the investigator and the judge. So it's investigating the racket, and eventually it will pronounce itself and make a decision on whether it was unethical and whether he should be punished or not. And the strongest punishment that this council can give is pretty strong. It's actually telling the president, recommending the president of the Republic to withdraw his medical warrant.
Wow.
So now he's filing a constitutional case, which means if he wins, it's going to mean significant changes for the medical council and probably even other institutions or other bodies which award and withdraw professional warrants as well. However, one does have to ask as to why he's only doing this now. I mean, this investigation has been going on for 2 years, and he knew exactly how the process worked, and how it will eventually pronounce itself. And now, at the very end of this case, coincidentally, he's decided to file a case, and he's managed to delay the inquiry because the medical council has decided to postpone it until the case has been heard. What do you make of this?
I mean, look, this is Stephen Spiteri. This is someone who potentially could be the next health minister. He could be taking Chris FEARNE's place. So you would expect the highest level of standards from a shadow health minister. Now, the accusation that he's been giving out prescriptions or whatnot without seeing patients, in Malta, this is a bit of a well-known secret. I think a lot of doctors actually do this. I definitely know growing up, I had quite a few friends who would get a sick leave note without seeing their doctor. So
have you ever got one?
I haven't, but I was always jealous of my friends who didn't have to leave their bedroom and still got a sick leave note. So this is definitely something that happens around Malta. Maltese doctors do it. Guys, you shouldn't do it. If you're giving out medical recommendations, if you're giving out prescriptions, you probably should see your patient, especially if you're the shadow health minister. So yes, as you said yourself, this case has been going on for years. I myself attended a medical council meeting regards Stephen Spiteri like in 2018. So this has been going on for years, and like you said yourself, I like the fact that he waited until now, years on, to start looking into a constitutional case. So this will continue, but another development in this case.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the fifth story of today, quite an egregious story, and it seems like more of these stories are popping up now, even though in the past they might have been hidden in the shadows. A 32-year-old British Maltese man has had his ID card confiscated after being charged with trafficking cannabis in 2014. So this is 6 years without having an ID card. Obviously, without having an ID card, it's hard for him to access medical care, social benefits, etc., etc. And it's gotten to the point where he told us, and I quote, "It would be easier for me to just go back to prison. At least I get 3 meals a day in there." Now, without going into the merits of the case, the fact that someone can have his ID card taken away for 6 years is a bit questionable. I mean, surely there's a better way to address this. I mean, sure, I mean, he might be considered a criminal, even though, as far as I understand, the justice system believes in innocent until proven guilty. But the fact that you've now taken away his access to medical care, etc., is very, very questionable. I mean, it's going to be very, very hard for this guy to get a job or to keep a job. And I can't even imagine the social and familial repercussions of something like this.
Absolutely. So from a legal perspective, his lawyers have filed an application asking for some, for some kind of, not some kind, for the court to release his residence permit or some kind of documentation to allow him to live life relatively normally until his case has been heard. Now, this is a facet of the justice system that isn't often spoken about. So like you said, we often speak about innocent until proven guilty. We don't often speak about the gap between being found either innocent or guilty, right? So it's, in a way, it's also kind of a prison sentence in itself. If you can't do anything, if your life is literally put on hold and you can't work because your ID card has been taken away, you can't travel, like, it's also a punishment in and of itself. Even though you're not in prison, in fact, this guy who spoke to us said, "I would rather be in prison because at least this
shocking."
Yeah, exactly. Another sad failure of the justice system.
Now, on the topic of delayed justice, we've actually got a special guest in the house who will be joining us shortly. But before we go to the guest interview, we're going to run a quick video reminding you of the story of Mason Nehls. Okay, so we're back in the Lovin Malta offices with Mason. Hi, man. How's it going? How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Thanks for joining us today. So obviously I wanted to bring you in to talk a little bit about your case. We had written about your case 2 weeks ago, and it had gotten quite a response. I mean, we got a response from people in politics such as Roberta Metsola, deputy leader of the Labour Party, Diane McAuliffe. We even had stars like Ira Losco speaking about the fact that no matter what the charges are, having to wait 11 years to be heard in court is a bit egregious. So first of all, I want to ask you, I know you've been in the shadows for quite a while. How does it feel to have gone publicly for the first time?
It wasn't easy, obviously, because it's your deepest fear, obviously. But seeing good response towards the article gave me a lot of courage, obviously. It was nice for them to speak about the article, and they took the time to say how you feel, obviously. So it was a really good reaction.
Now, a lot of people had commented, I was looking, that they are going through a similar experience. They might know someone who's going through a similar experience. Have people reached out to you who are in similar cases and still hidden in the shadows?
Yes, when the article came out, a few days later, some people started sending messages, obviously, and they're going through the same experience. Some are afraid to lose their job, some are afraid of people judging them, obviously, and it's hard, you know, so you can understand what the person goes through, and it's nice as well for them to reach out to you because it makes you feel you're not alone. There are other people as well that go through the same phase which I am going at this moment. And it's hard because, like I said, it's your deepest fear. You're afraid to lose your job. You're afraid of being judged. It's not easy living with the case already, so it's like awakening the case again. It's like you're reliving the same experience, you know what I mean? And it's hard, man, it's really hard. It's not an easy situation. You have to get up for work, you have to do your normal things, and you're always carrying this with you. You're taking it everywhere you go. You have to face people, you have to lie, you have to hide it sometimes for your best and for your family's best. So it all piles up on each other at the end of the day, so yeah.
Mason, your case happened when you were 16 years old.
Yes.
That was 11 years ago. So
yes.
you know you were practically a child back then, and you're all grown up now, and yet this case is still hanging over your head. How's it like, you know, living through, you know, these past years with this constant incident from, you know, when you were 16 years old, constantly hanging over your head?
It's horrible. Eh? There's no word about it. When I was 16, there was some certain things which I didn't take notice of, obviously. But when you start growing up, you want to build a family, you want to have a stable job, you want a good life. And with this case, you cannot do half of the stuff which you want to do. The case is hanging over your head, obviously, so that's hard enough. I can't get a loan. If I wanted to get a loan to buy a house or stuff like that, I cannot do those things. I can relate to the article which you spoke about. I didn't have my ID card for 5 years, man. So I couldn't do my driving license, I couldn't find work, I couldn't get equipped as short. So everything's against you. But you always try to find the courage to wake up in the morning, because if obviously you don't have the courage, you believe that you are no one. You believe that you've been forgotten in the system. You believe that even if people are going through certain things and you feel that they are below you, you always feel that you are below everyone. So you always have to keep the courage, and like I'm saying, it's not easy. I go to work every day. I am lucky that I have certain things, friends and family, which helped me out. But if I didn't have these stuff, and if I didn't have these people that love me, obviously it would have been harder than it is at this moment. So even thoughts going through your mind, if you're going to sleep at night, you're thinking about the case constantly. When your next court date is, so you think about that as well, a week before you even show up. So you have to go to work, you have to think about your life, work and your case.
So it's always on your mind.
It's always on your mind.
So I know at some point during the last 11 years, you did spend some time in prison.
Yes, I did 2 years.
2 years in prison.
Yes.
So what were those 2 years like? How old were you at that time?
And why did you end up in, just explain how you ended up in prison as well?
I lost my bail book, obviously. I was signing every day for 7 days a week. So that's Christmas, family gatherings, your birthday, if you're sick, anything.
Christmas as well.
Yes. So let's say if I have a day off and I wanted to stay at home, I couldn't because I had to go and sign. Obviously, at that age, I was 16 years old. I didn't drive a car. I used to walk to Halluqa. If my mom obviously was working, I had to walk it. If she wasn't working, she used to take me. But like we spoke about as well, I used to find the police station is closed. I had to go back home. I had to go back. It was going back and forward. I used to sometimes leave a paper under the door just to show them, and I used to write Mason Nehls, sign the date and time which I went, and I used to slit it under the door. Obviously, they didn't take any notice of that, and when obviously I returned to the police station, I sometimes found the same paper on the floor, just being stepped on.
So how did you end up in prison then?
Well, then I went to prison. Obviously, it was a hard time. I did the first 6 months. I used to only stay in my cell.
So what happened? You forgot to sign the bail book?
Yes, I forgot to sign the bail book, and they sent me back to prison. They wanted to send me to the lockup, and I said it's better to go to prison instead of sending me to lockup, doing 48 hours over there, which obviously I'm going to prison. So I decided to go to prison straight away. It wasn't easy, obviously. I was 16. I had friends outside. I was missing my family. Christmas came. You miss your family as well. Your New Year's Eve, when countdown, you try to sleep before the countdown so you don't go through that experience. Try to shut everything off. So prison is not a nice experience. But after those 6 months, I started talking to officers. Officers saw that I was a good guy and I wanted to do good about this case. They started giving me some jobs, painting, construction work. I used to work in the kitchen. That's where I gained my skills on catering. That was my very first step. They trusted me with all their heart, and I really thank them for that because they made my life easier in prison. But like I said, if you don't have these things on your side, at the age of 16 being sent to prison, you're missing out on a lot of opportunities. It's the time to build your life, to get a job, to get a car, and I didn't have anything of these. I was lucky to have my family at least.
There was also quite a personal incident you spoke about, right? When your father had passed away and you couldn't go there, right?
That was 2 years ago now. My dad died 2 years ago. It hurts me a lot, obviously. I missed out on a lot of things, but obviously, the pain which I have for my dad, it doesn't compare to any of this. I lost the time. How can you explain it? It's like, if I had a dream, I can do it after this case, maybe. But how am I going to meet my dad and the time that I've lost with my dad? I couldn't. I had to leave 5,000 in bonds. I didn't have that kind of money. You know, I have nothing over my head. So all I have is myself, you know what I mean? So it's hard. I miss him every single day, and even just that thought, it's hard to live with. So even when this case passes, I'm still going to carry that memory with me, you know? I lost him for 6 hours. I didn't get to see him. I saw him dead.
So to just explain a little bit what had happened, during these last 11 years, Mason's father, who lives in England, was approaching the end of his life. Your sister told you?
Yes.
Your sister told you that he was not doing well and asked him to come over to England to see him. Unfortunately, he was not able to reach the 5,000 guarantee. He didn't have those kind of funds, and he ended up not being with his father in the final hours of his life. So that's another thing that happened over these last 11 years. Just winding up this interview, to people who might just look at your case and say, okay, this guy's a criminal, or this guy's a drug trafficker, or just judge you without knowing your case, what would you tell to them? And finally, what would you want to tell authorities who might have the power to change the way the justice system works in Malta?
To judge someone is easy, but when it's your friend, or when it's your family, or when it's on you, then you start to think about it differently. Because to judge someone, it's quite easy, you know, but when it's on you, then you start to change your perspective upon things. Because I can say you're a thief, you know, I can say anything. So if it was for people's comments and if I had to carry people's comments along this way, I would have been in the dark for all these years and I wouldn't even have the courage to go to work. Like we said, it's hard. I tried not to take notice even when the article came out. I said like, right, I'm not going to look at any comments, positive or negative. I'm just going to get through it. But no, obviously, you're checking constantly what the comments are, how things are. But authorities, I think everyone deserves a second chance. If someone had done something, or even not if they didn't do something, and they were in a current situation, if you see progress, if the person has progressed upon these years, I think everyone deserves a second chance. I was lucky enough that the public, a lot of the public was on my side, and there was a few people that criticized me, and I would like to thank everyone that took the time to write a message, left a like, anything, even for those who criticized me. It always gives me courage, you know, to continue and to make a change. We need to change the system. The system isn't right. Waiting 11 years, waiting 9, waiting 10, it's not right. You know, you cannot put a person through all that stuff and then expect him to reform himself, because it's going to leave some kind of resentment to the person. You're not helping him. If you send me to prison, what am I going to get out of prison?
This is before the sentence.
You know, yes, exactly. What am I going to get? You know, if you have a mentality which you're saying, right, I'm off to prison, well, this time I'm going to do anything I want,
Very good point. So on that note, Mason, we're going to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
You guys can read all about Mason Nehls' story on Lovin Malta. We've got a massive article about that. We've also got some follow-ups, and we will be continuing to monitor this story for any more developments. I think that brings us to the end of today's show. From myself and Tim Diacono, have a day full of lovin'.